Okay, so we hear it all the time, right? To survive in the age of AI, you gotta learn to code, you gotta master the latest software. But what if the single most important skill is actually just knowing yourself? Seriously, we're gonna dig into some really fascinating research that makes that exact case. So, let's get into it.
I mean, this is the big one, isn't it? It's the question that probably keeps a lot of us up at night. With AI and automation just completely changing everything, the skills that got you here, well, they might not get you there. So what are we supposed to do? How do we get ready for this?
Well, to even begin to answer that, we have to understand what this new skills economy actually values. The thing is, the whole landscape looks completely different than it did even just 10 years ago.
Yeah, you've probably heard the term the fourth industrial revolution. It sounds kind of dramatic, but it's real. It's this moment where physical tech, digital stuff, and even our own biology are all starting to, well, blur together. And this huge shift, it's turning the job market upside down, and it's putting this massive premium on a very specific set of human skills.
And here they are. People are calling them the 4 Cs. And these are the things that AI, for all its amazing power, is actually pretty bad at. This is our edge, our human advantage. Critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. The ability to do this stuff is what's going to make us absolutely essential. Okay, so that's the goal. But how in the world do we actually build up these 4 Cs? Well, some researchers in Vietnam came up with a pretty surprising answer. They said, hold on, before you can build any new skill, you first have to understand your own operating system. I love this. They said you need to read the user manual for your own brain.
And that brings us to this big word, metacognition. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It is literally thinking about how you think. That's it. It's the ability to step back and look at your own learning process. The researchers call it a learning superpower, and for good reason. It has this huge impact, but it costs basically nothing to develop. It is the key to figuring out how you learn best.
And look, this wasn't just some abstract academic idea. To make it super practical, the researchers built an actual hands-on framework. They called it the RAP-OWL methodology. It's basically a step-by-step guide to help students develop this awareness and, really take the wheel on their own learning.
So what does this framework actually do? It helps every single student create their own personal learning profile. Yep, there it is again, that user manual for your brain. And it's built from 3 main ingredients: your cognitive style, so how you take in information, your learning style, how you actually go about studying, and your personality type.
Okay, let's make this real for a second. Let's just take one tiny piece of that profile, personality. Think about the Myers-Briggs. Just knowing if you lean towards extroversion, getting your energy from being around people, or introversion, where you recharge by being alone with your thoughts, just knowing that one thing can totally change how you show up in a team, how you solve problems, even how you cram for a test.
All right, now let's zoom in on what I think is one of the most fascinating parts of this whole thing, a student's basic approach to learning. Because this is where the data gets really interesting.
So the research basically boils it down to 3 main styles. First, you've got the deep approach. These are the folks who really want to understand why things work. Then there's the strategic approach, super organized, great with deadlines, totally focused on acing the test. And finally, the surface approach. This is all about memorizing just enough to get by, maybe driven by a little bit of fear. Come on, be honest. Do any of those sound like you? So, which one do you think gets the best grades?
Really think about it, because we always praise deep learning, right? That's supposed to be the gold standard. But when the researchers crunched the numbers on everything, from creative projects to final exams, the results were not what you'd expect.
Get this, it was the strategic learners, by a long shot. The students who were organized, who managed their time, who focused on the goal, they consistently got the best grades. Now, let that sink in for a second. It means that how you study, your actual strategy, can be even more powerful than just wanting to understand something deeply. Wow!
And this wasn't just a fluke. A totally separate study out of Stanford found the exact same thing. They found that just by getting students to spend a few minutes thinking strategically about how they were going to study, their exam scores jumped by an average of 3 to 4%. That's metacognition right there in action.
Okay, so knowing your profile is obviously a game changer. But knowledge isn't enough, right? The real test is putting it to work. And that's exactly what the researchers did. They didn't just hand the students their results and say, good luck. No, they made them use this self-knowledge in the real world. So check this out. In one of their workshops, every student had to take their own profile,
look at their teammates' profiles, and then actually give advice to someone else in the group on how to work better together. I mean, talk about forcing you to turn insight into actual practical action.
And the impact was incredible. Just listen to this quote from one of the students. She said, "A different me showed up, more confident, with better communication skills and clear targets for myself." It wasn't just about grades anymore. This process fundamentally changed her confidence, her skills, her entire outlook. But they weren't done yet. The program took it one final massive step further. To really put these new skills to the test, they had the students enter what was basically a flight simulator for startups, a totally safe space to try out new business ideas, to experiment, and yeah, even to fail without any of the real-world risk.
This whole setup was called the University Business Incubator, and it was a whole journey. First, you had pre-incubation, which is all about brainstorming and planning. Then you move into incubation. That's the flight simulator part, where you get coaching and build your idea in a protected environment. And the final stage, post-incubation, is getting ready for a real market launch. This is where all that self-awareness and teamwork really truly got put to the test. Okay, so let's pull all this together. After the self-discovery, the teamwork, the startup simulator, what's the big lesson here? What's the takeaway for you and me is we're all trying to figure out this whole future of work thing.
Well, let's start with a number. 1,500. A massive World Bank study looked at 1,500 small businesses, and they found that business training based on psychology, mindset, self-awareness, was way, way more effective than traditional training that just focused on accounting or marketing. It wasn't even close.
And that brings us to the most important point of all, metacognition, that power of knowing how you learn. It's not just another skill to add to your LinkedIn profile. It's the foundational skill. It's the bedrock. It's the platform you need to build everything else on top of, whether it's critical thinking, creativity, or anything else. So, that brings it all back to you. Knowing what you know now, that the real key to being ready for the future isn't another online course, but a simple look in the mirror. What's the first step you're going to take to start writing that user manual for your own brain?